Alright, so here's just a quick follow-up look to Mastermind Creations' Bovis, the first member they've released from their Feral Rex combiner, aka Predaking, their version of Tantrum. You remember I did a review of the figure a while back from TFCon when I had the first colored test shot of the figure. Here now is the final release figure, and I'm not going to go over all the transformation bits and all the different modes and everything, since they're exactly the same as the previous one. What I'm going to do here is this is a kind of a look into how the design process goes from even a mostly finished figure to a fully finished figure. They just announced today that they had to they swapped Fortis and Leo Ducks in the production lineup. Fortis is going to come out next, whereas Leo Ducks, their Razor Claw, was originally due out next. Mostly because they just got some full-color test shots of all the figures done, which they showed at the Guangzhou International Comic-Con this past weekend. There's a lot of pictures over on TFW and other sites if you haven't seen them yet. But and just found that like Leo Ducks needs some tightening. They want to tighten the joints so he's super solid in combined mode without leaving them, loose, without making them too tight for his individual robot mode. So there's little tweaks like that happen, and it's just part of the process. And so that's what's going on with them. But I'm going to show you, literally show you how some of these things change even from a almost final version. Because here was, and even these have been revised a lot since their original designs, tweaked and twerked and twerked. Anyway, from their initial designs. One of the first things you'll notice right off the bat is the face. They did go with a more muted snarl. He is still sneering over here, but it's not quite the open mouth snarl that the original did. The colors, a lot of people said the colors weren't rich enough, and personally I like the color of the original test shot. This isn't bad either. This is a nice color, but it's a little bit more muted. It's got a little bit more brownish tint to it. It's a slightly more mature, I guess, orange. It's not quite as vibrant and bright and in your face. Although this one really isn't over the top in that regard either. But you can see how they changed the colors. And again, on the test shot, this was a hand painted test shot, the shoulder pieces are molded. You can see in the orange plastic. Let's see if I can get in there. You can see it's molded in the orange plastic and then painted gray. Whereas on the final version, it's actually molded in the gray plastic and then the orange is painted on. And I'll show you that in just a second. Let me get him standing up again. There we go. You see now there it's the gray plastic painted orange. So little changes like that. Everything on the final version is a lot smoother and tighter. I thought this guy was pretty solid. This guy's really great. Works really well. Everything holds together very well. And everything on this is just slightly tweaked, just a little bit tighter. Everything that locks together just a little bit more securely. Like just little tweaks like that to go from okay to a really, really nice figure. And this really is a nice, solid figure if you've been reading any of the feedback on the forums. Some of the paint changes. Here is the hand-painted original foot. It doesn't look like the gray plastic has changed much, but you can see when I tilt it like that, the silver on the hand-painted one's a little bit duller. On the final version, it's much brighter and more vibrant, painted in a much smoother layer. So yeah, not a huge change here on the foot. You will notice the connector for the wrist is now molded in black on the final version versus the gray of the original color prototype. So that the paint app wise, you can see the original prototype had that kind of champagne gold on the chest, whereas the final version has the bright silver, which is a nice little change. And that's more of the original G1 characteristics. I know some fans are really fighting for that. So they changed that. The gray is a little bit darker. Well, actually, it's actually a little lighter here. It looks a little darker here on the legs, but that's just because of the way again, molded gray plastic versus molded orange plastic. And part of that, too, I think, is because since it's molded in gray plastic, the whole thing is gray, whereas the painted bits was just a painted... You see, there's more orange down the top, is what's really making those look different. Also, his little triangle here on his crotch plate is actually a bright silver paint versus just kind of the dark gray paint over here. So yeah, some physical changes there. The weapons, here is the weapon from the original painted prototype. You can see it's all painted that champagne gold, versus the final version, which is molded in kind of a champagne gold plastic, but then just just outside here. That's just the blade part is painted. And it looks really nice. It's not so different as to be distracting, but it really makes the blade pop more from the whole handle of the weapon. And it's a really neat effect in person. One of the other things that the biggest changes here is, the guns are pretty much the same. And you can see some of the pictures from the Comic-Con, people were complaining about the gun not being painted. And the gun is, like, from certain shots with the light hitting it just right, just like these, you can kind of tilt them so you don't see as much of the silver. But then when you tilt them, you can see that there is a paint difference. And it's just like that on the big combined form of the gun. It has the same gunmetal plastic over the dark gray, almost black plastic of the gun itself. So it's just a matter of lighting. And when the final version will have all these gunmetal accents on all the guns, just like the renders have shown. But so yeah, so on this one, on the test shot, he could hold his knives okay, but he could barely hold his guns. But at least the knife, you can get that in there. This is actually the release knife, but he could hold these just fine, no issues. And what they've done to help with the guns and to help with the knives, just a little bit more securely overall, is, let me see if I can get them in here. If you look inside the hands here, the final version, which is over here on the left, has a much more pronounced, let me see if I can't line this up so you can see what I'm talking about. If you have a figure like the Sharkticon Megatron mold, they've got kind of an open hand, and then inside of it there's a little ridge that makes more of the standard 5mm circle inside the hand, which was almost non-existent on the prototype. It's still there. I'm not really gonna see if I can get a zoom in on this. So you can kind of see it start, like right, that little bump right there. There's a little ridge here that makes the hand more of a circle for grabbing a weapon. Yeah, you can kind of see that tiny little bump right there in his hand. And that's why he wasn't holding the guns very well. Whereas on the final version, let's see if I can get this lined up again, you can see there's a much more pronounced, let me see if I can't focus on this a little bit better. You can see a much more pronounced ridge in the hand there. Like his finger kind of comes off at an angle up here, and then like his finger is actually this way, and then there's a little triangle piece of plastic that makes that more of a circle in there. So and then that's where some of the knife issues are coming from. But it now lets him hold his gun. Well, it helps if you push it in the actual circle much more securely. You can see that's not coming out, whereas on the other one it would just fall out just by looking at it. But in order to hold the knives, you have to be a little careful with it. And I found the easiest way to do this is to take it and just kind of slide it into the hand like this, where it has no resistance. Straighten it out. Flip it inside the hand before you even try to get into that groove. Flip it all the way around like this, so the spikes are pointing out, and then kind of push it into that groove, and then rotate it and snap it into place. And that way, like, it takes a little bit of doing, but I don't feel like I'm not trying to force it in. When you do that and just kind of rotate it in, it kind of just slots right into place. It doesn't snap. Some people were saying you can just snap it into place. And when it doesn't snap, that means it's not expanding and then snapping closed. So you're not stressing that part if you do it smoothly like that. And you can do it whether with the knife facing up or the knife facing down. It's actually a little easier with the knife pointing down, like a close combat melee weapon. Well, I guess a knife is always a melee weapon, but whatever, you know what I mean. But yeah, that's probably the safest way to do that. So just a heads up. But like I said, they increase the size of this little ridge here, so he can hold his guns very solidly. He can still hold his knives very solidly, but you can't just pop them into the hand. Like I said, like here's the same knife on the prototype. You could just take it in, just slide it in between the finger and snap it into place. And even then, it still fits very loosely. But you didn't have to worry about slapping it in or snapping it past anything or risk it breaking. It just fit right in. The drawback to that, like I said, was when you put the gun in his hand. You can see the gun even when you put it all the way up against the side of his hand, fits very loosely and would like to fall out. So that's another change. It's one of those little tweaks they have to make between, even the final test shot, which looks great. Everything works okay, combines into foot mode okay, he's very nice and solid. But there's just that little thing that makes it a little bit better. Now he doesn't drop his guns. It does make a little bit more You have to be a little bit more careful putting the knives in now, but now he can hold his knives and his guns, and it's just something that makes the figure a little bit more fun and a little bit better balanced overall for the end user, the consumer. And so that's the kind of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that sometimes it gets talked about. Sometimes you'll just get a generic, oh, we got to fix some tolerances on the figures. Well, that's what it is. That's what we're talking about when we say they had to fix this tolerance or they want to tighten something up. That's how it goes. So yeah, like I said, in the bull mode, like I said, the red's a little bit. You can see the red's a little bit richer on the final version. It's a little bit deeper red. Just little things like that. It just takes some time to tweak those things, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you're getting a much better product for your money. And when you're spending the kind of money you're spending on third-party figures, you kind of want the best figure possible. And I think they've done that really with Bovis here. And we'll certainly continue to do that with the rest of the Feral Rex members. So yeah, there's just a quick look at the. Like I said, if you want a more in-depth look at the whole at the whole transformation and the foot mode and everything, I'll link to my other review of the original prototype, because the transformation has not changed. Like I said, the only difference is like the feet lock in a little better in all the modes. They tighten some of the gaps. Everything clips together a little better. A lot like like the hand. Just little tweaks like that between the test shot and the final. So there's nothing majorly different other than the things I've pointed out to do a full transformation review here. But yeah, there you go. There's a look at the final retail version of Bovis. And just real quick, he does come with the comic, and then his little tech spec card that Unicron WMD from TFW 2005 did the art for that, which is really striking and very nice. So this is the instruction manual side. This is the comic book side. And he does, just like Terminus Hexatron, he comes in a nice big box with a cool magnetic clasp with a nice little tray inside. Some artwork over here. Just some really neat stuff going on. And that, just a quick look at the packaging, and there's him in a whole bunch of different modes on the back of the box. So yeah, there you go. There is a little look behind the scenes at how a figure comes together with Mastermind Creations R03 reformatted Bovis.